Well, good morning. Back again. Can't wait to be with you. Number 54. It's Myke and Mike on Gripping Reality. So thanks for tuning in with us, and hopefully today will be an interesting day for you as we start talking about a few things that might help you, we hope. So
you sound so tentative. That is absolutely a false impression in the minds of the 13 people who are watching us. We are going to not only help you, we are going to bless your day. We
bless.
we did whatever.
Bless.
We did a team teaching earlier this year at a financial management seminar, and they asked me and Mike, West Coast Mike, to teach for an hour and a half. So we came up with a 3-point training event, and we're going to, over the next 3 podcasts, go over those 3 points. They're very interesting. Today is Know Your Canaries.
Because we're talking about emotions, and so we need to get the context.
Next week, let's get the 3 out here. Next week is
pick your nose.
Pick your nose, and do it carefully.
Yes.
And the 3rd week is
give yourself permission.
Right. Give yourself permission. There's an old expression. Well, we'll get into that in a couple of weeks, but we're going to go back to Know Your Canaries first.
And we're doing this again in the context of emotions, which is what our training it comes from. Why do people act that way, and what can you do about it? And so it's in also the context of where we were with this group, which was really a lot of fun. We really enjoyed our day. Was in the context of dynamics within the workplace, and how do you change the workplace to be a place that is positive if it is a negative one? What are the things that you can do to help in retention of workers, because that is an extremely big problem right now across the country. And the great, lovingly, the last years they're calling the Great Resignation. People just stopping what they're doing and going to something else, going to greener grass kind of things. So it was a lot of fun to be able just to dive into that. And so when we do our trainings, this is not an ad, but just so the reality of how you know how we work. We really do not cut and paste from one training to the next. We endeavor to find out who the organization is. We do some research with them. We do some interviewing with them. We spend time figuring out the kind of personality they are, and really what their needs are, what they want to accomplish within that training. So because it deals with the emotional aspect of life, as you can imagine, it covers pretty much everybody, because everybody has emotions. So from that context, we were trying.
Except Mr. Spock. Mr. Spock does not have emotions.
Live long and prosper. Yes. So
we just have to say that for the Trekkies out there.
That's right. So that's where we came up with these 3 points in 90 minutes of what we could do to help. And knowing your canaries was something that we just kind of popped when we were talking about what's the number one thing, or should be, we say, not should be, the first thing that you might want to take in consideration when you're trying to deal with an emotional environment, particularly a corporate one of individuals together. And that just kind of, pardon the pun, sang when we started thinking about, okay, what does it mean to start trying to figure out what's going on in your relationship, in your workplace? And we said, well, you need to know your canaries. Well, what does that have to do with anything? So, Michael?
So the story really goes back to the early 1900s, when miners in deep shaft mines sometimes were overcome by fumes methane gases or carbon dioxide or whatever. And most of those gases have no smell. There's no visible evidence that they're present. But miners would just faint or die in an oxygen depleted environment. And over several different experimentations using mice and using various birds, various animals, someone discovered that a canary, for its size, has significantly larger lungs than almost any other animal. And they're very small, so they could put them in a cage, take them down to the mine. And if the canary suddenly fell over, they would often sing and they would often chirp. But if they fell over and went silent, the miners would know immediately that dangerous or toxic gases were building up in the mine and they needed to act and act immediately to get to safety. So the canary was the evidence that something in the environment was going wrong. So we're talking to executives, but we've also used the same concept with blue collar workers and with families and churches and all kinds of different groups, that in your life, let's pick one potent emotion, stress or anxiety. And the question is not when is stress full blown and it's killing you, but what do you begin to feel early on, or people in your environment early on, that give you a signal like a canary that something's not right in the environment.
Right. And that has to do so much with the ability um, to begin to uh, observe what is happening around you. Part of the issue of what
And to do that in real time. It's not just merely reflect what happened months ago. The question is right in real time, what in your body, in your stomach, in your head, in your headaches, or a coworker or something else in your environment. It could even be your dog picks up your tension before you pick it up.
Right. And the dog runs to the other room and you come close to or comes close to you because they're wanting to, I mean, the real issue that I see is the ability to observe in real time. And part of that has to do with, if we are so busy all of the time and we're go, 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 and I understand life is busy. But if we don't step back in the throes of of daily life, you will not be able to begin to identify your canaries. In other words, things that might not be going well. The tightness in your chest, you're just ignoring it and saying, well, it's probably something I ate, but now I've had it for 3 days. As well, am I having a heart attack? Well, no, most likely there's anxiety going on and your body's responding to that stress. And yet
so let's look at a few of the canaries that we have experienced in working with people or even in ourselves that are kind of common. Let's go theme by theme. Let's first look at eating habits. What would be a canary for someone that they could observe themselves doing that indicates stress is increasing, even before they're willing to admit it? What are some eating habit issues?
Well, some eating habits would be very simply, kind of could be on the extremes of both ends. I'm overeating or I'm undereating.
That's important to know. It can be overeating or undereating. All of a sudden, you have no appetite.
Exactly.
You don't want to eat anything. You've gone 3 days without eating just a few morsels. Or you get the half gallon of ice cream out and you chow the entire thing down and you can't stop eating. So it can be either one of those. What else?
It could be the fact that most likely you are a person that has a tendency towards a sweet tooth, and so you indulge. You just keep pulling more and more and more sugar into your world. Maybe you're a
which
fast.
could give you that stomach upset you had,
Right.
or you are over spicing everything, and
Exactly.
that leads to stomach distress.
Right. Or you're not eating healthily. You're just going to the drive-through every day because you don't want to deal with the issue of purchasing the food, preparing the food, doing all those kinds of things because you're frustrated, and so it's easier just to go and eat lots of fries and burgers. Um, that's an indication
So,
that
one
something's going
example
on.
could be you go for the convenience of food, and the other extreme is you spend hours detailing very particular recipes and immerse yourself. It's out of your normal.
Right.
So when
Exactly.
your food, so those are some food canaries.
Exactly.
What would be another canary?
Uh, I would say another canary would be your routine. Your normal routine is now changed significantly. So, for example, you were somebody who got up every day at 5 to exercise, and you have stopped doing that, or you're doing very little, or you're only doing 3 days a week, or
Or now you're doing way too much, the opposite extreme.
exactly
You're
the other
getting up
side.
at 3:30 in the morning
Right.
and running 11 miles instead of your normal 2 or 3.
Right.
So it's a change, a radical change off of your normal in terms of exercise and body movement. What's another one? The one pops right into mind for me, big one.
Another one would be how you respond to, if you will, if you're a person that's not prone to responding in anger to something because someone pokes you, criticizes you, whatever, and all of a sudden you find yourself popping off, which is not who you are. You're a gentle soul. You're known as being mild mannered and someone who is, who takes time. And now all of a sudden you're like responding in a very angry format of
And it
when
can go
somebody
the
pokes you.
opposite way as well. You would
Exactly. You
normally
become
have
passive.
something that would frustrate you, and you say, I don't care. I just
Right.
like everything rolls over. So it's a change in your emotional composition
Exactly.
that seems notable. What's another
Right.
one?
Another one would be within the composition of your emotions would be you're someone who tends to be uh, very up, very happy, very, life is great. You're the life of the party. Um, and now you are anything but. It's like you are sullen, you're become self-focused and introverted and apathetic emotionally. So there's the swing on either side that is just not the norm for you as an individual that people are going, what's going on? And you're not even seeing that
So
because you're still thinking,
emotions can be another
right.
canary. How about sleep patterns?
Oh yeah, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Too little, too much.
Too little or
Um,
too much. Either one of those can be a canary. So you'll have a normal somewhere between 6 and 9 hours. And it all depends upon not only each human being, but where you are in life. That can change over time as well. But if a canary, an evidence early on that you're under stress or feeling anxiety, even before your mind admits it, is you sleep 10 and a half hours or you can't get to sleep and you sleep 2 hours fitfully. So
right.
either one of those extremes off your norm can be a canary. How about spending, use of money?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Either you're putting yourself in debt, which is something you've never done, but you just buying and spending and online all the time and ordering it, running the Amazon, the UPS guy and the FedEx guy at your door, or you're tight-wadded and now you used to be a generous person and or helping out and it was never a big deal to you and now it's like you're counting every penny that's going on. So again, it's a change in the behavior, it's a change in how you have operated in life. And there's a distinct difference. So the question really comes back to that is observing what is going on, paying attention to what's happening in your response to life, and realizing that, wait a minute, something intrinsically is not going well here.
Right. And
Uh,
so, and our principle, the principle not applied, the principle is know your canaries.
correct.
We did not state the principle as know the canaries because there is no necessary similarity between one person's canaries and another person's canaries, even in the same family. So
Right.
the challenge is not know the canaries. A lack of sleep always means you're under stress. It does not always mean you're under stress.
Right.
It may
Right.
be that in this biorhythm of your life, you only need 3.5 hours and you're
Right.
okay.
Right.
But you know your canaries,
Right.
and that becomes the early evidence that you're experiencing stress or distress or whatever it happens to be. So, what do you do when you see your canary fall over dead?
That's right. What do you do with that? Again, it's back to that aspect of understanding what is happening to you, and where do I go with that? Um, how do I deal with that? The first part of that, and why we are starting with know your canaries, is is actually accepting what you're seeing to be real in your life, and that
Or
most
the feedback from others that are
that
close
was
to you.
that
So
was
your
my second
spouse,
part
your
of that.
child
Right,
says, what's wrong with you? You're flying off the handle all the time. Or why are
right,
you sleeping so much?
right,
So you'll get feedback from other people around you as
right,
well.
and that is as critical as your own observation, in my opinion. Is that within the community of who you have, it's you have to be I mean that sense of vulnerability may not be a really big, something that you're comfortable with, but when you are starting to move through these things and identifying that maybe something's going on here, that vulnerability of just asking someone that is a good friend and getting their input is pretty critical for you to be able to start identifying what in the world is going on here.
So the
Uh,
concept of vulnerability, that might be an interesting topic for us to pick up sometime. That word itself can be an offensive term when a person says, I don't want to be vulnerable like that. So
right,
think of it as collecting information
right,
or gaining a perspective from eyes around the corner of your life that you don't see. So it's not
right.
necessarily you have to become some kind of a West Coast wishy-washy feel-good tree hugger, I love the
Excuse me.
environment kind of
I
thing
don't.
with
Hey.
no guts and no backbone and no actual
No,
way
no,
to
no,
think for
no,
yourself.
no,
Well,
no. Stop.
not all West Coast people are like that, but people that I know from the West Coast are like that. But even if you don't want to become vulnerable,
We
you
feel your
can
pain.
get that information from others, even if you don't tell them that you got it from them. I'm just saying that in the most loving way possible.
Oh, stop. That is so
Stop
disgusting.
snorting. No one wants to hear you snort. Snorting is a good example that you're under stress.
That's because I'm talking with you. I'm always under stress when I have to do this work
So
with you.
rather than give you a template or a formula of how to reduce your stress point or your anxiety level, there's a lot of discovery about that. The principle we're trying to communicate today is know your canaries. There are going to be some evidences, usually a change or a deviation from your normal, that becomes an
Right,
indicator.
right,
So you learn, how does my body normally work? How are my spending habits usually done? How is my time or my energy level normally expended?
right,
How am I exercising or not? find out your normals, even if you journal, to be able to find that stuff out, or just do some reflection. How did my day go today? What seems off?
Right. And that's a real key of asking the question, because intrinsically and emotionally, when something's happening, there is that intrinsic piece of us that just goes, there's just something not quite right. And I don't know what that is.
And that would be the canary that's falling over its cage or
Exactly.
struggling to breathe. It doesn't mean that the
Right.
canary actually dies. It can
Right.
be it's not singing as much. So the kind of the idea is be aware of your normal and what it is that's throwing your normal off early on in the process. If
Right.
you can discover that, you can get one step ahead of yourself
Right.
and begin to deal with the underlying issues. We've talked about some of those in other podcasts. So look at the emotional systems. Is it my anger's out of control? I'm getting too addicted to something. This is really making me nervous right now. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. So there's dealing with those
Right.
outcomes. Knowing your canary is the early warning system that says something's off. Now, the important aspect for us is everything that's normal is okay.
Right.
You can be a driven, strong personality with a strong background. You fly off the handle quickly. That's just your norm. It's defensive. It's incisive. Whatever happens to be, that's okay. It's when you suddenly become way over passive. Passivity is not wrong. It's not automatically right. It just is something. But for you, that might be a
Right.
real trigger moment that
Right.
says something is way off.
Right.
Get a jump on it. Start dealing with the real issue when you see your canary fall over dead.
Right. And I'm gonna kind of segue off of this just for a moment of give you a just kind of a life skill that I know Mike has and that I have, that we've developed over our lifetime. And that whole observation aspect, you say, well, how do I mean, I don't know what how do I observe what's going on? Well, one of the ways that I believe you really can develop that skill is start observing the people around you and
Yeah, that one.
see what they are doing, and not only just see what they're doing, but pay attention to what's happening in their emotional makeup of what they're doing with their kids, the way they park their car, the way they shop, you know, spend some time
And you don't need
observing.
to psychoanalyze them.
No, it's
So
not
you're being
psychoanalyzing.
the FBI to investigate every single detail. It's just be aware and observant.
Exactly. It's what's fascinating to me. So, for example, uh, I find very interesting. Uh, you can be in a grocery store and people are, they're looking for items in the grocery store and they're oblivious. They literally are being oblivious to anyone around them. And they have all the aisles blocked, but they're not paying attention to anything that's going on except their little focus on their one spot. And I always find that curious to me is that well, why is that? Why is it that you are not sensing there's this other thing which are called humanity around you that we are part of and we want to help, facilitate? It just is interesting to see those kind of dynamics and then watch how long it takes for them to actually key in to the fact that, oh, wait a minute, I got everybody blocked up here. Oops, bad to be me kind of thing. It's just fascinating to me as you observe those kinds of dynamics. And those are people dynamics. But I watch people constantly. It's amazing to me when you go to the airport. I love going to the airport and traveling because I watch people. I just enjoy watching the dynamics of what's going on. And I find it so fascinating anymore where you go to, you go to a waiting lounge and what's everybody doing? They're on their devices, and that in itself is is a dynamic that you see, of like, wow, people will be on their phones and talking to somebody clear across the country, and they'll have three or four people around them. They finally finish the call, and what do? They go back to their phones because we don't know how to engage anymore.
Well, that's a
In
safety device.
Yeah, I mean, but you're going to get on a plane together, so it's like, wow. Anyway, I just think it's a good life skill to have, to spend time observing what's going on, because when you do more of that, you actually are able to reflect better on and observing what's going on in your own life and knowing those canaries,
So
because it's a skill.
one of the concepts we have really is to just be suggestive of what the canaries are. Your eating habits, your sleeping habits, your exercise habits, your spending habits, and your emotional habits. Those are only 5. But if you just begin to take account of your own normal, or the normal of those people with whom you have some life responsibility, your coworkers, your family members, whatever
Right.
happens to be. You just kind of observe that without becoming obsessive over it. You're not trying to become me or Mike. You're trying to just be aware of what's going on in your environment and in yourself, and you'll have some canary systems.
Right.
Know your canaries. When one of them starts struggling to breathe or falls over dead, do something about it.
Right. Well, I think that gets you started today. Uh, Next week we're going to just continue on along the same vein of understanding the dynamics of the emotions. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and we really want you to in that sense of where you're feeling like something is just off in life, spend some time. I hope that you've got some ideas of some skills, some things you can look at today, and that will help you identify maybe some of the dynamics that are going on that you can begin to adjust. So, thanks for being with us today. Um, this is West Coast Mike.
East Coast Mike, number 54, know your canaries. Number 55, pick your nose, and pick your nose carefully. That's next week, number 55.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks.
See ya.